Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally, and you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Finally Clicked, brought to you by Jesse D. Moore and his Montana memories, and Margaret Macaulay Smith. And
I like it when you introduce us the most. What were you going to call me?
Well, I can't. I was like Lake City.
And the Lake City Hood.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the 206.
But you don't really reference that.
No.
Say, hey, do you know I grew up in Orange?
No.
Montana?
I mean, I could do some hashtag 206 references, but it doesn't really define me. So
your rap game is weak also.
It's really weak. Yeah.
Yeah. Your lipstick is on.
I knew you were going to say something
today. I can't look at anything but your lips.
Well, after our favorite, our gift suggestions of the last time, I was like, you know what? I got to pull this out again. And what better day than for the client party day?
Yeah, you're looking dashing today.
Thank you. Yeah. This is the one time a year where I actually get to meet the clients. So I was like, best foot forward.
Green.
Let's get some more business.
Jumpsuit.
Yes.
You could wear wooden clogs. You'd look like an elf.
There you go.
Like elf.
I would be an elf for the party.
What was Elf's name? What was his name?
His real name?
No, in the movie Elf. Is it Bob? Bobby?
Oh. Bobby, probably.
Bobby?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Can remember my brothers yelling that.
That's like Jill's favorite Christmas movie.
Oh, really? That's pretty funny.
And Step Brothers is her like normal favorite movie. So
they had somebody dress up as Elf in Leavenworth last weekend, and he looked like an exact replica.
Yeah.
It was hysterical.
Right. Your brother Matthew should.
He'd be perfect for that, actually. Yeah.
Since he's 6'11".
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Is that right? 6'11".
Yeah. It's
so
insane.
tall.
I know.
I get crick in my neck when I'm talking to him.
That's how I feel when I look down on everybody all the time. All these people that are half my size.
Oh, really? You talk to a lot of 3-foot people.
I do.
Well, enough silly banter, Margaret. Time to get meaty.
Meaty. Ooh.
Yeah.
Let's get to the meat of it.
It's crazy time. It's holidays.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird time for me.
It's a weird time. Mm-hmm.
It's
not
weird
my favorite time.
I know it's not my favorite either, and I don't like having a bad attitude about it. You know, the holidays are such a special time of year. It's magical, and I feel like an anchor sometimes emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to my family or my kids or. Mm-hmm. December's like Christmas is the worst timed event in ever.
Yeah.
It feels like. But it wouldn't make a difference if it was another time of year. Mm-hmm. The reality is that the importance of the holiday is what makes it hard.
Mm-hmm. And I think you have a bunch of crashing, like I feel like right now, especially this week, I think the couple mostly text conversations that you and I have had about what our topic's going to be about today is I feel like it all collides at this time of year because not only is like the coming of an end of a year, but we're also about to start a new one. And there's all sorts of mixed feelings about goals and what are we going to do and how are we going to end this year. And then I think we come into a bunch of really conflicting feelings.
It is stressful for a lot of people. And if you're a business owner or you rely on a sales cycle at all, this time of year can be very stressful.
I know a lot of people that are feeling the same way we are.
So today I thought that we would talk about 4 thoughts on money around the holidays, specifically for real estate agents or like I said, people that are affected by a slower sales cycle due to the holidays. I see a lot of agents make mistakes. I have to remind myself every year of a few things. And so since I'm reminding myself currently, I thought I'd just.
I think it's great timing.
Let everyone.
We didn't talk about this prior at all, and I thought
my thoughts.
This is very authentic. This is very real time. This is very much in the moment.
Hashtag real talk.
Real talk.
Real talk.
Might have to drop that again.
For instance, today we are hosting a client event. That's a VIP event, invite only, to our top clients. It's funny. You probably didn't watch the presidential debates last night, the Democratic presidential debates. Well, for those that did or those that didn't, Buttigieg is a candidate running, and he did some sort of like fundraiser in a wine cave, serving $900 bottles of wine. Sounds amazing.
Jeez.
Like, invite me, Buttigieg. And Elizabeth Warren got on his case for like doing this like hoity-toity event towards people that have money, which is funny. And his response was, I'm sorry, I'm the only one up here that's not a millionaire or a billionaire. Like everyone else, I'm a mayor from a small town. I don't have millions. You do. So shut up, basically. And I bring that up because today we are hosting a VIP event, and it's in a wine cellar. It's a bit of a cave. Not really, but it's just a cool wine cellar in Woodinville, Washington. And it's not the best time of year to spend money. Like, I mean, I'm already spending money like crazy. And then to do a private event is challenging to my anxiety and sense of worry. And but we're going to do it today, and we're going to do it right. And there's this triggered inside of me an idea about talking about money in regards to being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, and dealing with the holidays. And having done this for 15 years, I've come to learn a few things that I try to remind myself. And so these are 4 reminders for the holidays about money. And
I can't wait to hear these. Just so you guys know, I haven't not heard them.
From my brain to your ears. Who are you texting?
I'm just doing a boomerang to let people know that we're recording.
Oh my gosh, it's so distracting.
I'm sorry.
Your social media presence is so distracting for me. Margaret, are you going to talk? You have to ask me questions.
I think you should say one of your thoughts, one of your points, and then I will respond to it.
Okay. I was looking for your little yes.
So I'm super excited about this episode actually, and I love that you just came out with it because it is, like I said earlier, very real, very in the moment, and I think this will also be helpful for a lot from the admin perspective and the admin side, because it's also a struggle for us. I have ownership mentality and thinking for sure, and ultimately I'm an employee, and so helping understand you and understand how to best help you, especially November through January, has been a struggle. And so I feel like I've gotten better at it over the last 2 to 3 years. And also part of it is also just knowing that I can't do anything besides do my job and do the best that I can do. And so having some boundaries around that and around my feelings, because I can get really, if I allowed myself, I could get very distraught like I have in past years. And so I think this is a fantastic topic for both owners and admin and people in different business industries. So I'm curious to see what these are that you have written up so delicately.
All right.
Was that a good?
I appreciate hearing your voice on this lovely day. Yeah, and this is another thing. Like, you haven't been in the office, so like, yeah, we're just like warming up to each other this morning today. All right, number 1, look for cycles. I think it's interesting that it's funny to me when sales trainers or coaches try to ignore seasonal fluctuations in a sales cycle. That it's all about activity. Activity is very important. And you certainly need to work harder during different times of the year. But one thing I've learned is to try to look for these cycles throughout the year. For us, it could be holidays. We know that, for instance, everyone knows we're not going to list homes on Labor Day weekend, 4th of July weekend, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Those are the 4 big holidays that kind of affect exposure for our listings, traffic, and sales in general. The other for us is weather. It is a monsoon out there today. It is.
Did you see some of those
nasty.
pictures from Tacoma? Literally feet of water. I want to find one. Would you list a home today? Not to mention it's a Friday, so it's not our typical day. But I think I've noticed the strategy behind how you operate, specifically on the listing side, and it's just smart. There are absolutely cycles when it comes to listings, and now maybe this isn't the right time, so you can push this question to later. But I do also hear you reference that we should never stop lead generating. Like we should never stop pushing, no matter what cycle we're in. So how do you marry that with your thought of there are cycles, there are times?
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that question makes sense.
So right today it is raining cats and dogs. It's gray. It's a pea soup outside. It is. People are hydroplaning. Jill woke up to a flat tire on her car.
Sucks.
It's just not. It's a miserable day outside. And I'm thankful that I'm not doing a photo shoot or I'm not having a home inspection because the crawl space would be wet. It's hard to get around.
It's horrible
right now, and people are bad drivers, and they get worse when it's wet. I don't want photography to happen. There's all sorts of things to be in our area in the Northwest. We actually see sales go down when it's nice outside. So we actually see sales dip after the 4th of July until about mid-August because it's summer, the sun's out. People will literally put their home search on hold to go enjoy the sun because it's so beautiful here in the summer. And it can be so bad here in the winter like it is today. And so I think just paying attention and starting to like memorialize patterns and recognize patterns, and then just equipping yourself with that knowledge can help you take some of the onus of a lack of activity off of you. People like myself, I'm hard on myself, and I'm always gonna think the worst, and that it's my fault.
I know this,
and
it's very hard to. And nobody can get you out of that. Like I can encourage you and cheer you all I can, but I
have to get myself out of that. And the trick I've learned is to recognize cycles. Like look for, if I like to look for validation, is the way that I'm feeling uniquely my perspective, or is it affecting a lot of people? If it's affecting a lot of people, great. I don't have to change anything I'm doing necessarily drastically. If everyone's having a great time selling and I'm not selling anything, then I have to worry and figure out what it is that I'm doing wrong. But if everyone's seeing a slowdown, I don't control the market, right? Like I'm one agent in this machine. And so being able to recognize that, hey, this is what's happening, recognize it, kind of cool your jets, settle back.
It's perspective. Yeah.
Another thing about looking for cycles that I thought about, specifically in regards to the holidays, is to buy gifts throughout the year, if possible.
Amen. I'm so glad that you said this because that is literally what I've been thinking about this last week. Is I'm going to put a reminder in my calendar for like October 31st because I can't deal with this last minute stuff.
Right.
It drives me nuts.
I think even buying, like, if you have
throughout the year is a great idea.
6 or 10, 12 people to buy for.
Yeah.
Like, just choose a month for each person and choose that time to think about what they want, or have a meeting with them, a lunch meeting, and let them talk about themselves, and they'll give you an idea for a thoughtful gift that you can buy before the holiday season's upon us. And that way you're staggering your expenses a little bit
And when there's
more.
less stress there in that month, I think then we could probably enjoy.
Well, there's
the month of
stress
December
in
more.
buying gifts, period. And it's not just money related, it's related to the gift itself.
Yeah. Well, you want
You
it to be
want to give
meaningful.
a bad gift.
Yes.
You want to give something meaningful.
Yes.
It doesn't even have to be expensive. And the problem is if we get stressed about the holidays, we get stressed about money, then the gift-giving ritual becomes really weird because the later it gets, the more money we'll spend in order to feel better about the gift.
It's twisted.
And so why not stagger that process throughout the year? And start to build a war chest of gifts that you've already paid for. And
No,
you
it's
don't
funny
have to
that you
think
say
about
that. I literally am going to create a space in my house where I have like a bucket or a box filled with just random things that I can have on hand to give when needed. Because I do enjoy gift giving. When I feel good about when I'm excited for someone to see my gift, it is the best feeling.
Right. And it's so great when you know that they're going to like it and it's thoughtful. And a thoughtful gift doesn't have to be expensive. And so I like the idea of taking people to lunch or coffee, happy hour, giving them a chance to talk about themselves, what they're into right now, and then using that as spring to help buy them something that they're going to like and care about. All right, enough about gifts. Are you ready for hack number 2?
I'm ready.
All right.
Lay it on me.
Create landmarks.
Ooh.
So
Landmarks.
these are financial landmarks. And this is probably my favorite hack, or the most effective hack for me. And that is when things are so down or bad, or I'm in a I'm in a dark place, or I'm in a scarcity mindset, it can feel like I'm never going to get out of it. And I then have to remind myself of all the other times I felt that way and then recovered. And so I'm really good about kind of acknowledging when things are not good in with myself, and then working hard and doing the activities and working and grinding and hustling, and then things getting better. And then and in that moment when things are better, I go, remind yourself of this. The next time things are bad, the next time you're down and depressed, remind yourself of how you feel right now. You got through it. You're on the other side of it. You don't live here. You don't live in scarcity. And while it may seem like it's not going to end, it will end.
Do you have any visuals or things that help you to remind you of that feeling? Because I know we've tried things in the past, but I'm wondering if there's anything currently that's been helpful to help you remember that.
I'll probably talk about it more as we go on to some of the other steps. I wouldn't say that it's visuals so much as, well, I do say create landmarks. So for everyone, it could be different. Maybe create visuals if needed. For me, I don't need to create visuals. For me, it's memory. For me, it's reminding myself. Like, another example of this on the positive side is the first time our team did over $1 million in gross commission income, we threw a party. And it was a surprise party. No one knew nothing about it except for me.
And me.
And you. And you and I planned this party. And we rented a boat, and it took us along Lake Washington. We had a catered meal. We had a lot of fun. We did karaoke on the boat. We did beer pong on the boat. And then when everyone was having fun and it was kind of the height of the moment, I went up to the second deck by myself. And I was fine. I didn't need anyone there. I just wanted to memorialize the moment for myself. Like, this is a huge thing that we accomplished. I hadn't accomplished it before in my life. And sometimes I just want to take a second to, like, take it all in and kind of remember how it felt, how it feels in the moment. And then I use that to drive me forward and to motivate me and push me through darker times.
It makes me think of, sorry, this is super random, but with the technique of tapping, I'm sure you know a little bit about that. I can't imagine what it means to you. But well, I learned a technique through a couple different people, but you remember a moment like that, and one of the things you can do to memorialize it is they have places on your body that you can tap into, so that when you have a moment when you need to remember something, if you tap on that, it will literally help you bring that memory up physically. And I realized I needed that because I need visual reminders.
Didn't that come from that Darren Brown special I told you to watch?
There was Darren Brown, and May Mangles told me that, and then also Nicole Sorempa when she did NLP with me. And I've never used it before, and I still have not used it currently, but I've just been thinking about it because if I can get myself there mentally and physically, then it will actually help. But if I don't do that, I can't. It doesn't help me in the moment. So anyhow, it just got me thinking about that because I think you're right. I think those moments are really important, especially if you didn't do that prior. Like if you don't celebrate along the way, when are we going to celebrate? When's it going to be enough?
Right. Well, you won't. Yeah. And then I think it's so easy to forget.
Oh, yeah. So easy. I mean, when you're in the moment, like now, like it's super easy.
And so when things are good, I think you should create a landmark. Mm-hmm. When things are bad, but you know they're not going to be bad forever, I think you should create a landmark. And it's funny to me that landmark is the word that I use, but growing up on the ranch, landmarks were important. And
find your way when you're out in that 40,000 acre ranch.
Well, literally. So the ranch I grew up on was 75 square miles, and pastures we had names for different parts of the ranch. You had to, right?
How did you even remember? I mean, I'm sure
it took forever.
When you're out there all the time.
It took forever. My son is playing basketball right now, and he's learning about sports, and he has so many questions, and I get it. Like football, we were watching the Seahawks last weekend, and I'm trying to explain the line of scrimmage to him and sacks and other elements of the game. And it's a very complicated game. You can't learn it in a week. Mm-hmm. Like to be able to watch a game with the sound off and know what's happening, what the penalty is, what that means. It takes years of watching football, I think, to learn that. And what am I talking about?
Landmarks.
Oh, thank you. So when you think about the ranch I grew up on, it took me a long time to learn the landmarks too. Mm-hmm. Like my dad would say the name of something, I'd be like, "Where's this at?" Like Collins Draw. It's a name of this really arbitrary place. And so I have to learn what's closest to home first, right? And then I learn the names of these places further out. And then I get a context. And in my head, I'm building a map of the ranch. And that's what you want to do with landmarks. Literally, on the ranch we grew up on, we had these things called, am I going to space out on this right now? Shepherd's wives. And what they are is they're stacks of rocks. It's a square stack of rocks, like 3 to 4 feet tall. And you'd see them in high place on like a high place, which is a rolling hill. You'd see a shepherd's wife. And what that was is when shepherds were roaming Montana before barbed wire fences and everything, they would create a stack of rocks. The shepherd's wife is what it's called. They'd create the stack to denote where water was nearby.
Oh, wow.
So that, because if you're in rolling hills and prairie and badlands, it's not so high that you can like see everywhere, right? And so you have these, it's hard to see over a great distance. And so you look for these landmarks that say, oh, okay, water's nearby. Now I need to look for water.
Interesting.
And when it comes to managing the landscape of a business, I think it's the same way. And I think you can get into unexpected territory. And I think you have to create landmarks in your head that say, hey, next time I find myself in this place, this is the way out. Or, man, this is a great watering hole. This is a great place for us to rejuvenate and to come together. I'm going to put a landmark there too. And this is one thing that I think I'm really good at. And I think I've needed to be good at it because I can become so obsessed with the here and now that it's hard for me to look past
as much
it.
As you are a vision maker and you can look out and create things that aren't there yet, you also, I think when something's happening in the moment, if it's not good specifically, you can get caught up in that for sure. Yeah.
I mean, my propensity to move out of something bad is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like I'm obsessed. It consumes me, and all I do is focus on how to get away from it.
Yeah.
All right. Step number 3. Control expenses without moving into scarcity. this has been something I've been talking to Jill about a little bit, where when I recognize that there's seasonal fluctuations in our business, specifically around the holidays, she'll have the idea of like cutting back. And I understand this premise and the idea of it, but part of it's kind of ridiculous in the sense that when you own a bit, like our budget, monthly budget, fluctuates depending on how many people we have on the team. But at a bare minimum, we need $25,000 a month to operate. Like, I don't make any money until we make $25,000. And when you have numbers that big, cutting
$300
a Hulu subscription out of your monthly budget
doesn't really make sense.
Doesn't really change anything.
No.
Now, I understand, and I want to, I'm not here to talk about the philosophy of money today completely. Everyone has their own philosophy, Dave Ramsey being one. Mine is that I want to enjoy the money while I am on this earth. And the reality is that I think you have to be cognizant of how you treat money at all times, because that is going to tell you if you're slipping into scarcity or not. If I start cutting Hulu and all these things that add enjoyment to my life and that are a very minimal expense overall, then I'm moving into scarcity. Now, if I think, hey, cutting Hulu doesn't really make a difference, doesn't make a dent in overall what I'm trying to do, then I think I stay in abundance. I'm not saying be frivolous. I'm not saying spend above your means. I'm saying that as a business owner, you're going to have profitable months and unprofitable months. And probably having reserves and a plan and the right mindset is more important than trimming a few $100s from your monthly budget. So focus on, if you do have to cut expenses, focus on big expenses first. Like, what is it that you're spending a lot of money on that isn't getting you the return that you want? And can you cut that back momentarily, or should you cut it out for good? But maybe it's something you can ask for a month or 2 or 3 months off, and then resume it when the sales cycle is fuller. I think we are really good about looking at seasonal hires and not hiring as much through the November, December, January timeframe, and kind of top loading our bench for interviews that start in January and February. Also, if we have someone kind of give notice in September, depending on the role and depending on the talent pool available, we will push that hire off. Now, that said, we made a hire this year in November. I want to say it was November.
I think it was. Yeah.
I think it was around the 1st of November.
Yeah.
And that was an expense, an added expense I didn't plan on making in this holiday season. But we found talent. And when you find talent, you got to
make space.
Exactly.
Yeah, make it happen.
So I'm not afraid to invest in my business. Well, I might be a little bit afraid, but I do it anyway. But otherwise, I'm trying to push out hires until after the holiday season. And then the last point on this, control expenses without moving into scarcity, would be have a plan for have reserves, have a home equity line of credit that you don't use unless absolutely necessary. These things take time and they take sales. Like, you can't get a home equity line of credit if you don't have any sales. And so I secured one after a good a solid 6-month period. And then knowing that I was moving into a leaner sales cycle, and I got that HELOC probably 15 months ago, and I've never used it one time. It's not there to be used. It's there if
emergency,
the worst thing happens.
Well, and you've always been, I tell people this all the time when I talk about in my class or in different conversations over the phone, like you're one of the best people I know with money. And I think that just comes from your background and from how you grew up and what you were taught and then what you've learned along the way. But you're very good in kind of forecasting, even if not even having to look at the P&L. Like once you have the numbers in your head, you can just do that and kind of always be aware of it on the daily. But you said something in the last 6 months about money. You said you were going to switch a little bit of how you operated with what you had in savings. You were going to start to take some risks with some of the money rather than just holding on to it because you felt like maybe you'd done that too much in the past.
Which takes us to our fourth
Oh, how perfect.
hack.
Oh, gee, okay.
And that last recommendation, the last thought I have on money around the holidays is loosen your grip. There is a gentleman, I won't name him. There was someone who, when I first got into real estate, he was a team leader, recruiter for an office. And he was also a producing agent. And I remember that was a tough time. I met him around 07, 08, 09, which was the housing recession. So it was a hard time for a lot of people. And I remember him getting commission breath. I remember that was the first time I'd heard the phrase commission breath.
Oh, it's so bad.
But I just remember him being so desperate for a sale that he stank. Like, no one wanted to be around him because he was so obsessed with, he was so desperate.
Yeah.
He was so desperate to make a sale that it was off-putting. And I remember that. And I remember telling myself, like, don't do that. Whatever he's doing, don't do it. And
it doesn't, ultimately, I think my number one takeaway from what I've learned about that is it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't help you on any front.
Yeah, and so it's hard when you get stressed not to worry, and it's hard when you worry not to freak out, and it's hard when you're freaking out not to freak out further, right? And that's the thing, is it escalates every time you give into it. It escalates to the point where you're frantic and you start not making sense, and now you're hard to be around, not only for your team, but for your family. And that level of stress just is not healthy. And I've certainly been there more times than a lot of people, I think. But I've come, and what you're referencing is, so thank God we read books. Because
saving grace.
When you don't like the thoughts in your head, read someone else's thoughts.
Yeah.
So I was reading or listening to a podcast, and I think I've probably referenced it before in this podcast, but Grant Cardone is a sales guru and motivational speaker and a real estate entrepreneur, business owner. And I heard him say something that really resonated with me. And he talked about how when he had $1 million or $2 million, how broke he felt. And I don't want to say the word that he used because it's inflammatory, but he felt weak, and he felt how do I say this? He just felt like a coward, and he was a coward with his money. And because he didn't have $1 or $2 million as a kid, he came from a tough background and like tough schooling, and he did sales and had some success, but then, he had a drug problem, went to rehab, and he's literally come from nothing. So when you get $1 million or $2 million, you treat money differently when you came from nothing. And he said something, and he goes, I've never felt more broke than when I had like $1 million or $2 million in the bank. And the idea that he's really stressing there is that when you get money, then you kind of hang on to it in a way that you lose your edge. Because you have $1 million or $2 million, you're so afraid of losing that $1 million or $2 million that you stop making aggressive plays, and you stop putting yourself out there, and you stop putting your money to work. And so instead you just let it sit in a bank account and not grow and not do anything with that. And I kind of did the same thing. We had a lot of success and a lot of money. And as someone who didn't come from money, I put myself through college without financial aid and without any loans. And I remember driving home from my junior year of college with my last $20 bill, and I put it in my gas tank. And I drove home to spend the summer with my parents and to work again and build it back up again. Mm-hmm. And when I heard him talk about this, I'm like, oh, that's what I did, is that I was holding on to my money too tightly. Once I got a few $100,000 or whatever, then I'm like, okay, this is way more than I've ever had. Mm-hmm. I'm going to set it aside and not touch it, because then I'll have this
always
money.
Have it, yeah.
And that's not how life works. It's not how the economy works either. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of took myself out of the game because I was trying to play it safe with money. And so I've learned from Grant Cardone and from thinking about it more and more and more, the more I realize that the reserves can handicap me if I don't have a great relationship with money, or my relationship is out of balance, then that idea of hanging on to money will absolutely paralyze me. And so by hearing Grant talk about it, I'm like, okay, one of the interview questions we ask everybody before they get on the team, or before we decide they can't be on the team, is how many times would you be willing to try at something and fail? And is that the question?
Yeah, how many times are you willing to fail before you succeed?
Okay, how many times are you willing to fail at something before you succeed? And the right answer is as many as it takes, right? As many as it takes. And so when I look at our team and I look at our legacy, our longevity, one of the things I have to remind myself is that I believe in us and I'm willing to bet on us. And that means I'm willing to bet everything. I'm willing to bet everything on this. Because if I'm not willing to bet everything, then I'm in the wrong game. I'm doing the wrong thing. And as soon as I made that decision in my head, or I had that thought pattern, this discussion with myself, and I'm like, oh, okay, I've been so worried about losing this money I had set aside that I've like strangled it to death. I've like suffocated it. I've taken all the joy and prosperity and movement out of this money, and now it's dead. It's this dead money, and it starts to leave you. And then I had this thought about the questions we ask people, and I'm like, Jesse, are you done betting on yourself? And I'm like, no, I'm not. How much?
Yeah, if you got to the end of your life and you were about to die tomorrow, would you regret not having risked everything?
Or, like, I think it's a great way to understand if you're supposed to be in or out of an industry, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Jesse, do you not believe in yourself anymore? Do you not? Would you not put every dollar on Jesse? And that's the thing that I love about this thought experiment, is that if I was in Vegas and I had to bet on all these different people, and then there's myself, a square, Jesse on it, would I not put all my chips on my square? I totally would.
Yeah.
I'm the only one in control of that square. And so when I listened to Grant Cardone talk about this, and then I started looking at my relationship with money, and then I started looking at how I started this, and I started this by betting on myself. I started this by talking to my grandfather and asking him, is this a good idea? Should I do this? And he asked me, are you willing to bet on yourself?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, that has not changed in me at all. And I'm like, great. All of a sudden, that worry just fell off of me. And I'm like, okay, well, I have this much money left. Let's bet it on Jesse. Let's bet it on us.
Yeah. When you said something a couple weeks ago when we were talking in my office with Jaggles, And it was a huge compliment to me. And also kind of, I think maybe through this thought process about money, you realized something about me. And you said something to the effect of, would Margaret be here? Margaret's not rolling in piles of money.
I can explain it. I know
Please,
exactly.
please say it.
Well, so I was having this conversation with myself, and I'm going to be vulnerable and open. If you are an agent in the Pacific Northwest, you probably know something about me. Either know a story, you've seen me out at an event, or it's funny, we had Garrett on last week, and he remembered being on a plane with me.
How
right?
random was
One
that?
time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, anyway, my point is that let's say you've been an agent for 10 years in this area, then you know my name and you kind of know our story and our success story. And you also know that I've been burned out. I've been burned out for a while. The divorce, separation, my personal life, reinventing myself, everything. It's taken a lot of energy, a lot of time. And it's no secret that I've been burned out for a while. And so when I was in my head and I was thinking about this industry, and I was thinking about sales dropping 71% in 10 years in our marketplace, and I want to be smart, and I don't want to be committed to an industry that's not working, right? Because that's a good idea to shift, to segue. And so then I was thinking, and I was having a pity moment, right, about how things used to be and how things could have been. And then I started thinking about, there's this mental mistake entrepreneurs make, which is totally legitimate and also a trap. And that is, no one knows what it's like. No one knows what it's like to be the one that has to pay payroll when no money's coming in. Or no one knows what it's like to have to add a team member when you're not making money yourself, that type of thing, right? And while that's true, I don't know that methodology works very well. And so then I started thinking, okay, well, Margaret hasn't had as much money as me, and yet she's bet her life on this. Like, you've bet your life. And here's what I mean by that. Because I had this thought experiment, this conversation with myself. Because I was really kind of trying to figure out, like, I was measuring sacrifices. And I was like, people don't know what kind of sacrifices I make for this company. And then I was like, okay, well, let's look at the sacrifices other people have had to make. And I had this great aha moment that I shared with you in Jagels, which was, hey, just because you haven't had the same amount of money as me doesn't mean you believe in us less or that your sacrifice is less. In fact, I'd argue it's probably more, in the sense that you could have chased money and opportunity and done other things, but you're making the same bet I'm making. And all of a sudden I'm not alone now. And I'm not stuck in this trap of entrepreneurship or business ownership that I'm carrying us. I'm not carrying us, not alone. And so that realization really helped me, because as soon as I recognized that, well, it's a martyr syndrome. I'm trying to make myself a martyr by saying, poor me, I'm making all these sacrifices, no one understands, and everyone's going to leave me. I also have abandonment issues, but let's not talk about that. We'll save that for another podcast. And then to realize, to then pause and reflect and then think about everything that's happened over the last few years, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the magical, and then realize how many people believe in us and me and in me and in you and in what we do. And I think it's also important to recognize that there are cycles in life. That was the number one tip I started off with, is things aren't always good. And sometimes they're bad. And guess what? When they're bad, they're not always bad.
Mm-hmm.
Things change and things move from spring to summer to fall to winter, back to spring again.
Mm-hmm.
And while things are hard and tough, they're not as hard and tough as I make them out to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the lack of production, lack of sales, holiday ritual that puts me in this mind frame that I have to recognize, acknowledge, talk myself out of, and move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you identified it. I mean, there's so many different things you touched on there. One of which, the martyr thing, I can totally recognize not only in business but in personal life with people. And I've done the same thing myself, where it's like the easiest explanation to yourself as to why you're feeling a certain way, or why everything's happening. It's because, well, I'm sacrificing everything. I'm the one doing this, 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 and this, and nobody else is doing anything. And it's damaging to not only yourself, but to the people you're working with and doing life with, in personal life too. So,
Well, there's another, Bill Gates. There's a YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you type in Bill Gates, richest man or something like that, you'll hear Bill Gates tell this story. I want to say someone asked him, when did you know you were rich or something like that? Or anyway, Bill Gates tells this story of being in an airport. Like, he's CEO of Microsoft. He's building the company. He's in an airport. He doesn't have any money on him. And he sees a newspaper kiosk, right? And he wants to read the paper. He doesn't have any money. So the newspaper, the owner says, go ahead, have the newspaper. And then 5 years later or 3 years later, it happens again. Same airport, same guy. He doesn't have any money. And he says, go ahead, have the paper. Well, eventually, like 10 years later, Bill Gates sees this guy and then is like, basically says, anything you want, name it, I'll give it to you.
wow.
Right? Like, you were generous to me when you didn't need to be. And because of that, I want to repay you. So, what would you like? And they had this conversation about generosity. And this guy said, well, I'm more generous than you are. And Bill Gates is like, what? I'm giving you more of something. Like, I can give you more than you can give me. And he goes, no, I didn't have it. I had barely anything to give, and I gave to you. You have millions, and you didn't give to me until now, right? And he just talked about, that guy said, I'm richer than you are.
Wow.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
And so that mentality is, you can't let money have control over you.
No.
You can't let money dictate your thoughts or your happiness. And this is something that I've talked to Jill about recently. It is hard to be in relationship with someone who's an entrepreneur or business owner in a sales cycle, because we bring our stress home.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we bring it home. And I'm trying not to do that. And I'm trying not to let my happiness be tied to a transaction. Period. Ever. This life is big and beautiful, and I it's too big and beautiful to ignore because of whatever problems I have.
Yeah.
Or whatever problems I think I have.
Yeah.
Or whatever problems I think might be around the corner that I haven't even manifested yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've realized that, and it's kind of something that I see now with wisdom about some of these upstarts that are getting into real estate, have gotten into real estate in the last 5 years. They didn't go through the housing recession. They haven't had a bad market. They haven't worked through a bad market. And I applaud them for their success. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they're on the up cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to hit a down cycle.
Yeah. And that's going to be the first real test.
Right.
And I think we've had enough of a history and journey, I know we have, where that stuff doesn't scare me like it used to. The first 4 years, I was kind of like, what happens when we don't have business? How does this go? What do we do? How do we get creative? And now we've done it enough times that I'm like, I think that's what settled me into this kind of really nice mode, is like, it doesn't mean that I'm not constantly thinking too about what else can I do to make more of an impact, to bring in money, what's the ROI of the admin department, but it has given me a sense of peace to know that I feel like no matter what happened, whatever cycle we were in, whatever happened, whatever bump in the road happened, we would figure something out because we've been tested enough times. You've been tested enough times in your creativity. It's part of the, I mean, I tell you this, and I don't know if you really believe me, but you're one of the best, most creative, financially aware businessmen in the Pacific Northwest, in the real estate region. It's one of the reasons why I'm still working with you, because I know without a doubt that if I was working for someone else in the 7 years that I've been in the industry, I probably wouldn't still have my job with that person because they would have had to, in quotes, let me go.
And this has been a conversation we've had, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about having a guest on the show.
And I think we still should, yeah.
We'll see.
At some point.
But it's challenging because I don't know if I agree.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would agree.
Well, it doesn't matter if we agree or not. I think it'd be an interesting conversation.
We thought about having a guest on who just recently laid people off right before the holidays.
Yeah.
And I understand the desire to do that.
Sure.
From a financial standpoint, I get it. And at the same time, I'm like, these people contributed years of their life to support my business. Mm-hmm. Can I not see them through a few tough months? Mm-hmm. Or whatever the case may be. And it's a weird place. And I don't want to confuse our listeners. Because I know you could be listening in a different market and things are great. Mm-hmm. You could be listening in Seattle and things are great. Mm-hmm. Everyone's on their path. Everyone is in a different part of the cycle. Mm-hmm. For us, we had our upcycle during a very unique market with we had short sales and distressed REOs, and there's a wealth of property a wealth of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And not everything remains the same. And as some of those opportunities fell off and fell away, I didn't adapt as quickly as I would have liked to have because of this mindset that I had about money. And I hadn't had it before. Mm-hmm. And when you have it, you cling on to it unnecessarily. And sometimes you have to lose it to get your mindset back.
Well, I think something that's really I've learned over the last year, and then that I realized the other day, I'm like, I'm trying to teach this to some people I know. Any change that you want to make, any shift in mindset is like rewiring a piece of your brain, and it does not happen quickly. And I hate being patient in that aspect. I want a different money mindset now. And yet, like all the things that have happened over the last couple of years had to happen in order for you to get to this point where you're at, in order for me to get to this point, like as much as we would have loved for it to speed up, it wasn't ever intended to. Like,
well,
I'm trying to teach that to people because there's people that just want overnight, like.
And I have this written down. That's my last thing for this last step, which is loosen your grip. Is by loosening your grip, you allow creative juices to start flowing again.
Yeah, that's so true.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So, like, hey, you need to make money.
Yeah.
That's a great time to be creative.
Yeah, it's so
right?
true, yeah.
But you can't be creative if you're focused on hanging on to your money.
No.
You just can't. Mm-hmm. And so then that's what I mean. By loosening my grip on money, it kind of like opens everything up for me to be creative and then attack. Mm-hmm. Like, do it.
Yeah.
And like today is a good example of that. We're doing a private VIP event. Mm-hmm. Why? Because our clients are the most important part of our business. Mm-hmm. And the client experience is the most important part of our unique value proposition. Mm-hmm. What better way to, like, give our business a shot in the arm than to remind our database of that?
Connect with them, talk to them, see them.
Right. And I didn't get, in fact, I could have flexed on our vendors and asked them for contributions like most agents do. But this private VIP event, our vendors are also our clients. Mm-hmm. I want them to come and not have to give anything.
Yeah, which rarely happens for them, so I think it's really special.
I want them to come and enjoy their time.
Yeah.
And I would love their sponsorship and their participation, but that isn't the message I want to send. Mm-hmm. The message I want to send is we value you, and even though you're a vendor partner of ours, you're also a client of ours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because we don't celebrate that enough, we're going to celebrate it tonight. Mm-hmm.
And the book is closed. The book of notes.
Book of notes. I should probably go over it one last time. All right. So 4 thoughts on money around the holidays. Number 1, look for cycles. Mm-hmm. Number 2, create landmarks. Number 3, control expenses without moving into scarcity. And number 4, loosen your grip on money.
Oh, so just out of curiosity, thinking about your landmark one, do you have a landmark for 2020?
Well, I'm not there yet.
Oh, you only create them after you see them?
Yeah, I think they're created in the moment.
Okay.
Or you look for them in the moment.
Okay.
And so this client event on December 20th, which is close to the holidays, it's not a pie giveaway. It's a very different.
Yeah, different than we've ever done.
I will say this, like this client event is different than anything anyone else has ever done.
Yeah.
It's different than anything we've done. And it's different than we've seen anyone else do. And it could be a miserable failure. It could be a flop. Or it could be amazing. But we're doing it. And that's a landmark. We
should have totally done a live podcast during the client event.
No, we should not have.
Yeah, just like a quick 20-minute one.
No, our clients are our most important thing.
Well, that's
us.
it. We could interview the clients.
No, and the reality is,
sparking up now.
Just to kind of explain to everyone, things are not that dire. It's just that it was interesting in November. We were going to be profitable in December.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not. Yeah. Very often it's not. And we were going to be profitable. I was like, great. This is something to celebrate. All those deals died. Like
in a matter of
deaths.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to have a good January.
Yeah.
And I'm not overly worried about the year or anything else. It's just my personality to obsess. And so I'm talking myself out of this obsession. I'm talking myself out of scarcity. I'm talking myself out of it by talking about it with you guys.
It's good. I can see it happening.
Just like I can see that red lipstick on your face.
Maybe I'll use that for the image today. That was some cash. Well, that was really good real talk. I liked it.
Real talk.
Real talk.
Hashtag real talk. Real talk. Money matters.
You know, random thought.
Oh.
I've gotten so used to working with you that it doesn't surprise me when I come in and you have a podcast episode ready and I'm just like, okay, let's go with it. Let's roll with it. Like, that's not the old Margaret. Somebody invited me to be on their podcast next month and they sent me like a questionnaire before it. And I was like, wow, this is prepping, I guess. I don't really feel like we need to do this. Can't we just roll with it? Like, down to like, are you okay with swearing on the podcast? Do you want to be asked questions or do you talk a lot? Do you talk a little? Like, I was like, this is so bizarre. I haven't thought about stuff like that, like prepping for something like that in such a long time. I believe in preparation, don't get me wrong, but I'm much more able to roll with it.
Yeah, I think we can flex on that a little too much sometimes. And that's why today
you had your 4 points ready to roll.
I took my time. And when you came in today, I had everything written out and ready to go.
It was impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you. Merry Christmas, Margaret.
Merry Christmas. Oh my God, it's next week.
I ordered your present. It's probably not going to be here on time.
Okay.
But it's ordered.
Okay. It's ordered. All right.
It's kind of hilarious.
Oh God.
And good. I mean, it'll be good. You'll get it.
I thought you already told me what it was.
Laugh. I changed my mind.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought that was more a gift
Did you talk
for
to
myself
Santa?
than for you.
Oh, okay.
I almost bought Margaret tickets to a band I love that I'm not going to be able to see because I'm going to be gone. And I know you'd enjoy them, but you might not enjoy them like I enjoy them.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to buy you a gift I'd buy myself.
Okay.
And so instead I bought you
something hilarious.
It's not hilarious. You'll appreciate it very much, but you'll get the humor of it too.
Okay. Cool.
So happy birthday. Good Lord. Happy birthday, Jesus. Baby Jesus.
Oh my God.
Merry Christmas is what I was trying to say.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.